Imagine a world where alcohol never existed. No beer, no fermentation, no buzz, no ritual drinking, no celebrations built around a shared cup. Now zoom out and realize that world might not have cities the way we know them. Because alcohol isn't just a drink. It's one of the earliest technologies humans ever discovered, something nature makes for free, that changes behavior, builds groups, and turns ordinary food into an event. And the craziest part is, humans didn't invent it. We stumbled into it, then learned how to make it on purpose, right now. If you want alcohol, you do something absurdly modern. You open an app, pay, and a bottle shows up. But if you travel back through most of human history and explain that, people wouldn't be impressed by the delivery. They'd be impressed by the fact that you can get a mind-altering drink whenever you want, clean, predictable, labeled, and safe-ish. Because for ancient humans, alcohol wasn't a product. It was a wild accident you learned to hunt down. And later, when humans got clever, it became something you could make on purpose. So the real question isn't who invented alcohol. The question is, when did humans stop finding it by luck and start manufacturing it? And how did they drink it, store it, and build culture around it? The reason alcohol appears so early is simple. Fermentation doesn't need a lab. Fermentation is nature doing chemistry when you're not watching. Yeast eats sugar and produces ethanol. That means alcohol didn't need to be invented the way the wheel did. It needed to be noticed. Think about a forest floor. Fruit falls, gets bruised, rainwater collects. Wild yeast lives on skins and in the air. And after a little time that fruit turns into a sweet-smelling, slightly alcoholic mess. Animals notice that. Primates notice that. Early humans definitely notice that. If you ever ate overripe fruit and thought, this tastes different, you've already touched the beginning of the story. So early alcohol consumption was probably opportunistic. Fermented fruit. Naturally fermented sap, honey mixed with water that starts bubbling on its own. Nobody calls it beer. Nobody calls it wine. It's just a strange, powerful food that makes you feel warm, relaxed, and a little different. And humans are pattern machines. The moment you connect a smell and taste to an effect, you remember it. You look for it again, but accidental fermentation is only step one. The real shift, what turns alcohol into history, is containers and repeatability. The moment humans can store liquids, the moment they can keep food in one place, the moment they can control time and temperature even a little, alcohol becomes a craft. You can intentionally combine sugar, water, and time. And once you can repeat it, it stops being luck and starts being tradition. Now, when do we see the earliest evidence of humans deliberately fermenting? Archaeologists usually say, earliest known evidence, because we only know what survives. But we do have strong clues from multiple regions that point in the same direction. Deliberate fermentation shows up very early. And in some cases it seems to appear around the same time as early settled. Life may be even motivating it. One of the clearest this looks. Intentional examples comes from ancient pottery residues in places like Jiahu in China, where chemical analysis has been interpreted as evidence of a mixed fermented drink made from ingredients such as rice, honey, and fruit. The important detail isn't just they drank alcohol. It's the planning. Multiple sugar sources combined, stored in jars designed for liquids. That's not an accident. That's a recipe mindset. In the Near East, grain processing becomes central to life. And grain is basically alcohol waiting to happen. Brewing beer from grain sounds complex, but conceptually it's simple. You turn starch into sugar, often via sprouting malting. Mix with water, and fermentation does the rest. Compared to making consistent bread, brewing can be surprisingly forgiving. You don't need an oven. You need a container. That's why some researchers have argued half seriously, half hilariously, that early humans may have been motivated to cultivate grains, not only for food, But because reliable grain means reliable beer. Whether that's the main reason farming began is debated. But as a hypothesis, it reveals something real. Alcohol was valuable enough that humans would reorganize life to produce it. So what did ancient people actually drink? Here's the key. Alcohol wasn't one thing. It was whatever your environment could ferment. Grapes turn into wine. Grains turn into beer. Honey turns into mead. Palm sap turns into palm wine. Milk can be fermented into mildly alcoholic drinks in pastoral cultures. Different landscapes produce different alcohols. The drink follows the ecology. And how did they get it? Ancient alcohol generally comes from 3 supply chains, none of which require modern industry. First, wild harvesting. Overripe fruit, naturally fermented juices, honey, sap, things you can find. Honey is especially important because it's concentrated sugar, and sugar is fermentation fuel. Dilute honey with water in a container and fermentation becomes likely. Easy in theory. Dangerous in practice because bees don't donate. Second, household production. Once people store grain or harvest fruit, fermentation becomes a way to use surplus. Alcohol is also a way to transform perishable sugar into something that behaves differently in storage and social use. A household can brew, share, trade, and repeat. Third, institutional production. This is where alcohol becomes part of civilization. Temples, palaces, and states organize production for feasts, rituals, rations, and trade. At that point, drinking isn't just personal, it's economic. Alcohol becomes calories, payment, and ceremony in one. Now the drinking itself looked different than what you imagine. Early beer wasn't always clear, fizzy, and cold. Much of ancient beer was thick and cloudy, full of grain particles. People sometimes drank through straws to avoid sediment. They drank from large shared jars. Communal drinking wasn't just culture. It was the physics of the drink and the containers. One big jar is easier than many cups. It also creates instant social bonding, whether you wanted that or not. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, beer and wine weren't only for parties. They show up in labor, in ritual, and in daily life. In Egypt especially, beer appears repeatedly as a practical staple, calories and hydration in a world where clean water access could be inconsistent and where hard labor demanded energy. Alcohol also becomes religious. Offerings, festivals, temple life. Fermentation looks supernatural without microbiology. You put sweet liquid in a jar, wait, and it transforms into something that changes the mind. That feels like magic. So societies treat it like a gift from the gods, a sacred tool. Or both. And here's the bigger point. Alcohol helps power the kinds of gatherings that build culture, feasts, rituals, labor, coordination, alliances, trade. A drink that gives people a reason to meet, share, and celebrate can amplify social structure. That doesn't mean alcohol created civilization, but it can strengthen the behaviors that make civilization possible. Now were ancient people constantly drunk? Not necessarily. Alcohol strength varied. Cultural rules varied. Daily patterns varied. But it's clear that in many places alcohol wasn't rare. It was integrated into diet, ritual, economy, and medicine. And yes, ancient people sometimes used alcohol as a carrier for herbs and mixtures, because it extracts and preserves compounds better than plain water. Again, not modern pharmacology, but practical observation. So when did humans start drinking alcohol? Probably long before anyone wrote it down, because fermentation is everywhere in nature. But when did humans start drinking it on purpose? As soon as they had containers, storage, and the ability to repeat outcomes. That's when alcohol stops being an accident and becomes a technology. Final perspective shift. Every time you drink today, you're participating in a relationship older than writing. older than cities, and possibly older than farming in some form. The labels changed. The purity changed. The cups changed. The science became real. But the impulse is ancient. Take sugar, let nature transform it, and use the result to change how it feels to be human. If you want to dig deeper, I'll link sources and references in the description. And if you enjoy Ancient Daily Life Explained, simply subscribe. New videos regularly. Sources always cited.